Brian Flores took a different approach than many of us have seen before. Very reminiscent of Roger Staubach.
Yeah, so we can compare a rookie QB to a toddler.
So that's why I have the Mavs winning in 7, and then Luka's just going to be Luka.
Hayward's absence for this game will be significant, and I wouldn't be surprised if this game turns into a blowout as of late.
The Golden Knights just can't pull it. I really think the Avalanche are determined this year.
They made so many moves and grabbed so many guys that they have to win a championship or at least make the finals. They were on our championship and bust.
Dallas has just been on a tear. I believe we can attribute that to Jason Robertson. Also, Jake Ottinger, who's really stepped in.
Kaprizov and the rest of this crew. Jordan Greenway, who doesn't get enough props. He definitely is somebody who needs to be mentioned more. I definitely think this is going to be a great series, and I'm interested to see how much Kaprizov can impact the game as a rookie.
Yeah, and as a Cowboys fan, I have learned how dangerously good Aaron Rodgers has been with he can just thread a pass.
Is the Avalanche versus the Blues. I believe the Blues are starting to play some of their best hockey all year, so they can push this to 6 games.
If Leiter's there, I'm happy with Leiter because I think he fits into what you were saying about a much quicker thing. But if Leiter's not there, which is seeming so, I say Jordan Lawler at number 2.
The same self. The only year he won an MVP was the year he cheated, which really should put something against that MVP. But
there will be a Rodgers playing for Green Bay, even though he may not be the quarterback. But it's still unknown there. Austin is giving me the dead stare, so I guess don't mention Aaron Rodgers to him right now.
A top 3 corner in the league in Jair Alexander, and pairing him with a really fast corner should definitely assist in their ability to guard anybody in their division and anybody in the league.
Hello, I am Ruby Ackerman, and you are listening to Outsider's Opinion with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NBA playoffs review of the first round for our opinions of the week, and then we're going to do some predictions for the second round. We have all our predictions that started before the playoffs, or one game into the playoffs, but we did all predictions of that, so make sure to check that one out. But we're going to review the first round and look over our picks. Let's start with number 1. The Phoenix Suns beat the New Orleans Pelicans in 6 games, and the Suns for Devon Booker was out since game 3 and then came back in game 6 with a hamstring injury or something similar to that, because I don't think you can come back that quickly from a hamstring injury. But that, I think, was allowed the Pelicans to gain ground with Brandon Ingram playing very well with CJ McCollum. But I think there are some good things from the Pelicans, but I wouldn't be too worried about the Suns with how hard it was, or how it took longer than expected to beat the Pelicans, but I don't think this impacts their chances that much for for winning the whole thing. What do you think?
Yeah. Devin Booker didn't play all that well in Game 6 when he returned. He only had 8 points or 11 points and didn't shoot all that much, but I think he'll be fine for the Dallas series, and yeah, I don't think it hinders their ability to move past this next round.
Yeah, and then on the Pelicans side, I think you have a really good foundation. You have Brandon Ingram, you have CJ. This was also without Zion, and I know there's been talk about Zion signing an extension as he's up for an extension. I'm not sure how they deal with that, but the rookie that was guarding Chris Paul,
Jose Alvarado
was really good. Jackson Hayes was also good. They got a lot of young guys, so it really worked out in that CJ McCollum trade. Seems to be working out for him too. So I think it's a bright, not too bright, but I think there are positive outcomes that you can take from this series if you're a Pelicans fan.
Well, yeah, and they had 3 rookies playing. I do think their future is extremely bright because they have 3 rookies that played: Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and Jose Alvarado. And then you have young players like Brandon Ingram, who's still extremely young. He's 24, 23, 24. I think he's 24. And so I definitely think that they have a serious chance of contending next year. And I mean that if Zion's healthy, but that just I think he will be next year, and that'll be a scary lineup, especially if they keep Jonas, who's a good player, and Jackson Hayes on the rise and all that stuff.
Yeah, and they could probably make some moves in the offseason in addition to Zion coming back. So it'll be interesting to see. Now we'll go to the Grizzlies versus the Timberwolves. It was wild. The Ja Morant game winner. I believe Game 5 was just incredible the way he went up there. But also, you got to see a lot of the supporting cast. Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bain. That really helped them. And with the Timberwolves, you got to see Cat took a little bit, but little bit of time, but then he started to get going. But Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell, I think I think it's positive. They also had Patrick Beverly, but I think they just need to allow Edwards to grow, see what he can do and how he can pair with Cat. But I think there's some stuff they need to do with like the bench. But the Grizzlies, it's just how talented that roster is. What do you think?
Yeah, and I definitely think this team has a very bright future as well. Both here, Grizzlies very young, and so are the T-Wolves. Although it was pretty disappointing some of the performances that Cat had. I don't think that's evident of him slowing down his progress as a player. Sometimes it just takes a little bit for you to get used to the playoffs.
Yeah, and like we saw John Morant last year in the playoffs, and now he's kind of gone off. The thing with John Morant is like outside shooting, 3-point shooting could get better, but just the way he can get to the rim is incredible. And then some of the Desmond Bain shots for three are crazy. But I think that's pretty much it. Anthony Edwards had some good plays. And then Patrick Beverly is just funny to watch when he says too small. Um, he's entertaining and probably annoying for the other team, but I think we all expected this to be a tough series. Did anything change your view on the Grizzlies or Wolves?
Not really.
Now we go to the Warriors versus Nuggets. I'm glad the Nuggets didn't get swept. But with the Nuggets, you were without Jamal Murray and you were without Michael Porter Jr. But you almost forced the game 6 against the Warriors. Steph just went off. And I really liked Bones Highland. And like you still have Monte Morris. So I think next year is when Jamal Murray should be back. And then you can pair him with Bones Highland, or maybe Bones Highland is coming off the bench. And then you have Monte Morris in the starting 5. And then hopefully they keep Aaron Gordon. But it just stinks that this year it was mostly Jokic. And he just didn't have stars or superstars like Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. to help him with this playoff
And
run.
Jokic was out there by himself. Aaron Gordon, Monte Morris had some good play. Same thing with Will Barton, who hit the game-winning 3 in Game 4, but it really wasn't enough. And I didn't really think it was going to be this one-sided, but obviously with all the injuries, it makes sense why it was.
Yeah, and the Warriors, Steph was coming off the bench for most of the series, which was interesting. But you saw Jordan Poole, then Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. I think just you would have sometimes the Poole, Thompson, and Curry lineup together for just a few minutes, and they were just incredible. So it was just good. The Warriors seem to be back. We'll see how they do in the second round against a tough Grizzlies team, but it kind of just gave me like faith. Okay, good. I'm not too worried about that. I picked them to win the series and then win the whole thing. But Nuggets, I still think Jokic is the MVP. Like this shouldn't impact the regular season MVP because it's a regular season award.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't, Jokic averaged over 30 points per game during the playoffs. So, and in the last game, he had like 18 and 19 or 20. No, he had more than 18. He had like 24 and 19, I think, in that last game. So there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, and now we go to the final series in the West, and that's the Mavericks versus the Jazz, where the Mavs won for the first time since 2011, and they won it in 6 games. And just the ending, you can't. That's like the best case scenario. I maybe like best case scenarios he sinks to 3, but you get Bojan wide open with a 3 to win the game. You can't draw it up better. Draw it up better.
Yeah, and the Mavs were pretty lucky. Not only did Mike Conley travel with 5 seconds left, but then they foul Jalen Brunson and he misses one of the free throws that allows Boyan to be able to try to win the game. If Jalen makes that free throw, there would be no chance of winning the game unless Spencer would have fouled Boyan on that shot. But obviously, they skated by, and sometimes that's all you need. A little bit of luck can always help.
Yeah, and like on the Mavs part, I think two main takeaways are probably Jason Kidd and what he's done as a coach and like how he's proved a lot of people wrong, including myself, because he really turned this defense around um, and just got him to work. And then he's really empowered players like Josh Green did not fear shooting threes, even though he kept missing them. Except one night he was like 3 for 5 or whatever. And then like he believed in Reggie Bullock, believed in Kleba, just something we didn't see with Rick Carlisle, and he got the Mavs to win a playoff series. And then the other thing I would like to talk about is Jalen Brunson and just how he really came alive in the playoffs. And in last year's playoffs, he wasn't really that impactful, but he's really like the reason they won the games when Luka was out because he dropped that 41 um, game, and then Dinwiddie was not really good in this series. So
Yeah, he was not that good, and he also basically choked away game one. He missed so many free throws in game one that he threw away the chances you guys had. But I'm confident that he'll come through this next series, and if not, they may be questioning what they do because they may lose Brunson if they're not careful.
yeah, they have to be careful, and I think Brunson's stock rose even higher, and like the price with that stock rose. But I think I really like the offense. In there were like glimpses of where Jalen was having the ball more, and then he was sharing it with Luca, and that's something. If Luca can get just an average catch and shoot three, like where it's not a step back, I think that will really help improve the Mavs offense in the future. But we spent a lot of time on the Mavs. But any final thoughts before we move on to the East?
Nope.
So now we go to the Heat versus Hawks. The Heat 1-5. Hawks had a lengthy playoff run last year, but Clint Capella was injured, and the Heat with Kyle Lowry, even though they were without Kyle Lowry in the final game, the Heat just have a great team, and they can all step up. Tyler Hero was great. Um, Adebayo. Any other notable things you noticed?
There were some injuries in this series. Obviously Capella, but also Kyle Lowry for the Heat was out for a number of games, and so we're gonna have to see how that moves forward. But I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they all get healthy and uh, Kyle Lowry can help them in the next series.
Yeah, and then Jimmy Butler, there was one game when he really turned it on. But Hawks, I think they can get more pieces and learn from this experience. And like Trey Young didn't really have a good series, but I think he'll learn because the Heat defense was just so good. He'll learn how to overcome those challenges and do better in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how these playoffs move forward because the East playoffs were not close. There was not many close series. Even the one that went to 6, which was the 76ers versus the Raptors, that was a 3-0 series to start. So hopefully as the playoffs move along, the series get closer, especially in the East.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then we'll go to the Celtics versus Nets. I thought this was going to be wire to wire, but the Celtics really just beat the Nets. And my question to you is how much is this the Nets beating themselves, and how much is like the Celtics just being a great team?
Well, I think it's more of the Nets beating themselves mainly because I don't believe they trust each other right now because they're always either out with something other than injury or with an injury. They weren't playing LaMarcus Aldridge. Their rotation was weird. Joe Harris was out with an injury. They weren't 100%. They picked up Seth Curry. They picked up some other guys. They just need to work out what they're gonna do in the future, and they didn't seem like a coherent team. And now people can blame that on Sean Marks, the GM, or blame that on Steve Nash, but really the players have to come together, and I don't necessarily know if they did that.
Yeah, and like Kyrie didn't really play well. KD just shouldered a lot of the load, and just some shots weren't going in. And on the Celtics side, they just did a great job defensively, and I felt Tatum was incredible, especially that game one win with that layup. But Jalen Brown, there's just some nice shots, and then Robert Williams was able to come back, a huge defensive boost for them. They also had Marcus Smart, who won Defensive Player of the Year. But to me, Tatum was just great with his passes, even though he did foul out in the closing game. And that's where you kind of saw where the Nets could maybe steal a game. But Jalen Brown really took the load, and they didn't let the Nets win a game. So I do agree, though. I think if the Nets, I think Ben Simmons is here, you at least win one game
I
if he
think if you
plays.
play everyone who's on your team, yeah, probably. And Joe Harris was there, and they played LaMarcus Aldridge. I could see the Nets winning this series. I don't think the Celtics have enough offense. We're about to see that in the Bucks series.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, but it is interesting how they're balancing it, and then how their threes aren't just going down. But we'll talk about that when we get to the second round. Now we got the Bucks versus Bulls. Bucks in 5. I thought this was gonna be closer, like maybe 6 games, maybe 7. But the Bulls, DeMar was guarded by Drew Holiday, and then Lonzo out. I think really hurt them. But then the Bucks, the big thing here was Chris Middleton. He's out for a while, and that really hurts your chances. And if you can just keep advancing and then Chris Middleton comes back, that really helps your championship hopes.
Yeah, 100%. And while he's supposed to be out completely against the Celtics, I don't know if that matters. I don't think the Celtics have enough. And I didn't really think it was going to be all that close of a series, mainly because of the fact that Lonzo's out. He's a big defensive anchor. Patrick Williams got back at the end of the year and played okay in the series, had some bad games, had some good games. But this is another team that didn't play with each other a lot during the season, and they obviously are new to the team, or a lot of them are, like Lonzo, like Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams is a young player, DeMar obviously, so Vucevic has only been here for a year and a half. So next year is going to be the year where I really think they need to make a step forward and win a round.
Yeah, I agree. And the Bucks really forced the Bulls to shoot threes, and the Bulls just weren't hitting them. Like I think they shot like 52 threes one game, and they only made like 15. I'm not sure about the game, like which game it was, but the Bulls, the Bucks just had great defense, and Giannis was great. And then Grayson Allen, I think had 2 20-point games. That was huge, especially with Middleton out. Am
Yeah, but
I saying?
the biggest
I
thing
wasn't
is
sure.
the defensive capabilities of the Bucks. They obviously have Serge Ibaka, who's a good defender, even though he doesn't play all that much, and they have Drew Holiday and former Defensive Player of the Year Giannis on their team, and Brook Lopez isn't a bad defender. It just they have a lot of guys that can really contest you, and it's gonna put a whoever faces them, it's gonna be a really tough task.
Yeah, and now we go to the final game of the first round. That's the Raptors versus Sixers. I almost thought the Raptors were going to pull it off. It's just the Sixers with the Joel Embiid injury and Doc Rivers, like previous past, with dealing with like closing out games. I thought they were going to do it, but then they just came up short, and the Sixers really turned it on. James Harden is not really like the old James Harden. Like he's still getting used to stuff. But the Raptors, I can't believe they made it this far, especially after trading Kyle Lowry. Siakam was great. Barnes was injured. So was Gary Trent. And then Van Fleet was out, and they were able to win one game when Van Fleet got injured. So I think the Raptors should feel confident. Sixers, I feel less confident in because you were up 3-0 and you let it go to 6 games.
Yeah, and the Sixers obviously are going to be without Joel Embiid for an indefinite amount of time, and I do think that hurts their chances. There was a lot of injuries on the Raptors team this year, I should know, because I had three of them: Gary Trent, Fred VanVleet, and OG, all on my fantasy team, and they were out for a number of games during the year. But I'm excited for their future, and I'm honestly questioning whether the 76ers have a true chance against the Heat.
Yeah, so let's just go right into the East second round because the second round for the West, I think, is going to be great. So we'll start with the Heat versus Sixers. I do agree with Embiid out. I think it's going to be really tough. But the Heat are without Kyle Lowry, but still, Joel Embiid being out really hurts the Sixers, and it's going to be a tough. It's going to be tough for them offensively unless James Harden uh, reinvigorates himself and does a lot. But he's going to have to get to the free throw a lot, but also make some like step back threes. But the Heat defensively are just incredible, and I think they do win the series. I know in my other predictions I had the Sixers winning. It's just with Embiid out and the Heat with how well they played in round one versus how rough the Sixers series was in round one, I think the Heat win probably 5 or 6 games.
You mean in 5 or 6?
Yeah, in 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, okay. I agree. I'll probably take Heat in 6. I think the Lowry injury will hurt, but not enough for uh, the 76ers to be able to overcome this Heat team. And maybe Joel gets back by game 6, but I don't think it matters at that point.
Yeah, and now we'll go to the Bucks versus Celtics. I have a little bit more faith in Celtics than you. I think the Celtics can make it very competitive, even though the first game did not show it. I think defensively, they're going to have to figure out how to just limit Giannis, and because you can't stop him. And with you're gonna have to get to the offense and just not shoot a ton of threes. Like I know they shot a lot more threes than they usually do. So I think Tatum's gonna have to go off, and then you're just gonna have to limit Giannis, because they are without Middleton. That's the big thing that kind of has me like think the Celtics could pull it out. It's because Middleton isn't there, so he's a big scorer, and I know Giannis can't shoot a jump shot, but he can get to the rim. You do have Drew Holiday and some other players, but I think just the scoring of Middleton is what bothers me when I look at this series.
I don't think that matters all that much because the Celtics haven't really proved to me that they can actually score the basketball that effectively. They're a defensive-centric team, and while I think Robert Williams is a much better defender than Marcus Smart and probably should have won Defensive Player of the Year over him, I don't think him or Marcus Smart could stifle Giannis and Drew Holiday enough for this series to go all that long. I'd probably take Bucks in 5 right now. I just don't think the Celtics are going to be able to score enough against this Bucks team, who's also really good on defense, for the
Yeah,
series to be all that close.
I'll probably say Bucks in 6, but I think the Celtics are going to have to look and adjust a lot from game one. But we do both have the Bucks advancing. But now we'll go to the West. We'll start with the Suns versus Mavs, if you're cool with that, and then we'll save Grizzlies versus Warriors for last. The Suns versus Mavs, I think it will be very interesting, depending on how well Ayton plays. Because to me, with Rudy Gobert as the center for the Jazz, he wasn't that threatening on the offensive side. Defensively, he's incredible and changed a lot of the shots, and I think he limited a lot of the production from Dinwiddie, because that's how Dinwiddie usually goes to the rim and gets fouls. But when you have a rim protector like Gobert, it's very tough to get to the free throw line. So I think in the Aiton's production in the post, I think, is going to be a huge thing to see if the Suns just run away with it, because that's the weakness on the Mavs, is they really don't have a center. It's Dwight Powell, and a lot during the Mavs and Jazz series, they played Kleba at the 5, and Kleba is a good defender, but Ayton can outmuscle him. And then if Booker's healthy, then it's going to be tough for the Mavs. And then I'm curious how the Suns guard the Mavs, like who guards Luka, who guards Brunson, and then how do the Mavs guard Ayton?
Yeah, and I probably would take Mavs if they had a true center, but they don't. And so I think Ayton's going to be too much for them to overcome. And while you may have Dorian guarding Booker and Bullock guarding Paul and Luka on Bridges and then Brunson on Crowder, I don't know if the Mavs could do enough. As the Mavs are not the best offensive team, obviously they struggled with offense all year, but they're going to have to stifle Ayton. I think Ayton's really the X factor, and that's probably why I'll take the Suns in 6.
Yeah, I think Suns in 6 is a good estimate, maybe even 5. Unless if the Mavs really want to win the series, you're going to need Luka to play out of his mind in like the whole series. And like he has to score 40 a night or something and then Brunson help out. Like you're not going to be able to stop him, so you just have to be a really heavily offensive team. So that's something I'm wondering, how do they balance what they found against the Jazz with Luka? And I think it's something we'll see a lot more next year if they keep Brunson, is just you have another ball handler with Brunson, and now you kind of have to like get Luka off the ball, but still be productive off the ball, if that makes sense. And then I think the Suns, Ayton is on a contract. He is up for an extension, or he's a free agent, right? They didn't decline to extend him, right?
I think
The
so.
Suns. So he is a free agent. So depending on, I think the Suns will keep him, especially if they go far. But if he doesn't do well in this series, maybe they reconsider keeping Ayton. But if he does well, I think that drives up the price for Ayton.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
yeah, I agree.
Like I think Ayton should be productive, but if he's not, then that's something I would be worried about for the Suns.
Yeah.
But now we can move on to the Grizzlies versus Warriors. The Warriors. Do you want to talk about the Draymond ejection?
Sure. I think it was a flagrant 1, but it obviously was not even close to a flagrant 2, and I do think it's pretty silly that he was ejected.
Yeah, I share the similar thoughts. Like definitely a flagrant 1, but should he have been ejected for that? No. And so the Warriors were able to still win, but I think it's going to be a very tough series. We're going to see how Ja Morant does, because in the first game it looked like the Warriors were letting Ja Morant shoot threes. Just not getting to the rim, but he did get to the rim in the final shot that could have won it. Won
Yeah,
the
I just
game,
have to
but
say real quick, sorry to interrupt, but that play
yeah, no,
call
you're
I
good.
think was very, very good. Now, I would have done a floater if I was Ja instead of the underhand layup he did, but again, I'm not in the NBA. But I do really like that play call that Taylor Jenkins made, because it really does actualize your best player's best ability, which is speed for Ja and driving probably. So I think that was a beautiful play call, and even though it didn't work, does not mean it's a bad play call.
Yeah, I totally understood what you were doing. You're trying to get the ball to Ja Morant, and he's going to the rim, and he almost had it. I could have seen it totally going, because that's very similar. It would have been less acrobatic than the play to win Game 5, when he's like up in the air and he changes in
Hmm.
air. But like I totally had no problem with it. Like I know there are other good players, but Ja Morant is the best player on that team, so why not give it to your best player? And I think the Warriors did a good job defending Ja in the first game. Like I know they had Gary Payton, um, but I think there are some things they can work on, like Steph. There were some threes where he just wasn't hitting them, and then Klay Thompson missed 2 free throws. But I think it's gonna be tough just because of like the talent on the Grizzlies roster. But the Warriors also have talent, and they have that experience of going far in the playoffs, unlike the Grizzlies. But Jordan Poole has really been incredible for the Warriors so far.
Yeah, and for a prediction, I don't know. I think this series goes 7. Now, whether or not it's Grizzlies or Warriors, I don't know. This Warriors team does not look like it's capable of winning a title, mainly because in a scenario where they play against the Bucks, the question who guards Giannis is key, and then I don't really know where they move forward from there. And Aiton's going to be a really tough matchup, even if it's Draymond. Ayton has a really good hook shot, and no one can really guard that hook shot unless you're much taller than Draymond is. So I don't think this Warriors team is built for really a title run this year. I think they need to get James Wiseman healthy, but I'm still going to go Warriors in 7.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go Warriors in 7. I'm going to stay with most of my picks. The only pick I really changed was the Heat versus Sixers because of the Joel Embiid injury. But I think it would be great, and it's a great learning experience for the Grizzlies. And I believe they didn't really trade that many draft picks, so they can get another player in the draft,
Yep,
right?
I think so.
And they've really excelled at just getting solid players and really developing them. So it's been fun, especially on the west side of the NBA playoffs. East, I hope it gets closer, but it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out, and we'll keep you updated. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.